Most people think running out of money in retirement comes down to bad luck, a market crash, an unexpected illness, some unpredictable disaster nobody could have planned for. But that's rarely how it actually happens. In almost every case, there are three numbers sitting quietly in the background the entire time. Numbers that predict the outcome years before the money actually runs out. And most people never look at even one of them. The first number is your withdrawal rate relative to your portfolio, not the dollar amount you're spending. The percentage of your total savings you're pulling out every single year. This number matters more than almost anything else because it determines whether your money is shrinking faster than it can recover. Pull out 3% a year, and history shows your money has an extremely high chance of lasting 3 decades or more. Pull out 6% or 7% and the math changes dramatically. You're no longer relying on growth to sustain you. You're liquidating your own foundation, year after year, whether the market cooperates or not. The dangerous part is that this number often looks fine in year one. A 6% withdrawal rate doesn't feel reckless when your balance is high and markets are calm. It only becomes visible as a problem 5, 10, or 15 years in, once the compounding damage has already been done. By the time most people notice this number is off, they've lost the years where fixing it would have been easy. The second number is sequence of returns risk, and this is the one almost nobody accounts for. Two retirees can have the exact same average annual return over 20 years and end up in completely different financial positions, purely based on when the bad years happened. If a market downturn hits in your first few years of retirement, while you're also withdrawing money, the damage compounds in a way that a downturn in year 15 never would. Here's why. When you withdraw money during a down market, you're selling more shares to generate the same income, which permanently reduces the number of shares left to recover when the market bounces back. A retiree who experiences a 30% drop in year one of retirement while withdrawing 5% annually can end up running out of money a full decade earlier than a retiree with the identical average return, just because the bad year landed early instead of late. This is why the first 5 years of retirement are statistically the most dangerous. Not because retirement itself is risky, but because that specific window is when a bad sequence does the most permanent damage to your remaining balance. The third number is your fixed to flexible spending ratio. Essentially, how much of your annual spending is locked in no matter what, versus how much you actually have control over. This one gets overlooked constantly because people focus on total spending instead of spending structure. A retiree spending $60,000 a year, where $50,000 is mortgage, insurance, and fixed bills, has almost no room to adjust when markets drop. A retiree spending the same $60,000, where only $30,000 is fixed, and the rest is travel, dining, and discretionary spending, has enormous flexibility. They can simply spend less in a bad year and let their portfolio recover. Flexibility is what actually protects a retirement plan during a downturn. Rigid expenses force you to sell investments at exactly the wrong time, regardless of what the market is doing. The retiree with more fixed obligations is the one most exposed to the sequence risk described earlier, because they have no ability to pull back when it matters most. So how do these three numbers interact with each other in real life? Say two households both retire with $1 million. Household A withdraws 4% annually, has average sequence luck, and has 50% of their spending in fixed costs. Household B withdraws 5.5%, experiences a market downturn in their first 3 years, and has 80% of their spending locked into fixed obligations. On paper, both households look similar at retirement. Same balance, similar lifestyle goals. But run the math forward 20 years, and household A is very likely still financially secure, while household B has a meaningfully elevated risk of depleting their savings a decade before household A does, even though neither household did anything reckless. They just had a different combination of these three numbers. That's the uncomfortable truth. Running out of money in retirement usually isn't caused by one big mistake. It's caused by three quiet numbers compounding against each other for years before anyone notices. So what can you actually do with this? Start with your withdrawal rate. If it's sitting above 5%, that's worth examining closely, especially if you're in the first decade of retirement. Small adjustments early, even reducing spending by 10% for a couple of years during a downturn, can meaningfully change your trajectory decades later. Next, build a buffer specifically for sequence risk. Keeping 1 to 3 years of expenses in cash or stable assets means you're not forced to sell your long-term investments during the exact years when a downturn would do the most damage. That buffer is what buys your portfolio time to recover. And finally, look honestly at your fixed to flexible ratio. If most of your spending is locked in, even small market drops can force uncomfortable decisions. Building in flexibility, the ability to genuinely cut discretionary spending during a bad year, gives your entire plan far more resilience than most people realize. None of these three numbers guarantee anything on their own, but together they tell you far more about your real retirement risk than your total savings balance ever will. Two people can retire with the same amount of money and end up in completely different situations purely because of how these three numbers lined up. So here's the question worth sitting with. Do you actually know what your withdrawal rate, your sequence exposure, and your fixed spending ratio look like right now? Or have you only ever looked at the total balance?